I'm Teresa Coraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today, my title is Who is Robert Malone Really? And why is he suing Ginger and Peter Breggin for $25 million plus? My title is taken from Robert Malone's Substack, which is Who is Robert Malone? And I've been an avid subscriber and contributor to that for several months. I really enjoy the cartoons that he posts twice a week, the agriculture, the topics on geopolitics, on journalism, and very much on the vaccine. It brings together a wonderful community of very informed and caring people. And so this has been a real hub for me. I've learned a lot about what's going on. And so I was very interested when he posted the entire lawsuit that he has launched against Peter and Ginger Breggin. I heard about this when on his Substack, someone mentioned frivolous lawsuits, and someone posted and said, oh, you mean like the $25 million that you're suing the Bregans for? And that came as a shock to me. So I was very interested in looking in depth at this lawsuit and what the details of it are. I'm not bringing really any new information, but I want to look at this logically, because I think that 25 million is not a way to clear your name. 25 million is an act of aggression. It is an act of violence. It's something that you're doing to shut someone up. And that, to me, has made me need to look more closely at everything, and I'd like to include you as the audience in that, because even on his website, which you have to be a paid subscriber in order to contribute, this has caused a lot of controversy, including the most outspoken person being banned. So I want to look at this and look at this in depth. I'm wearing my glasses today because this is going to involve a lot of reading from the Substack article from my Third Paradigm, where you'll be able to find all of the links and all of the verbatim quotes, and I won't be including all of those here. So this lawsuit is against Peter and Ginger Breggin, America Out Loud, a website that they contribute to, Dr. Jane Ruby, and Red Voice Media, which is Stu Peters. It demands a trial by jury, seeks not less than $25 million in compensatory damages, not less than $350,000 in punitive damages, 6% interest pre-judgment going back to July 2022, and court cost. The charge is defamation by implication and insulting words. So the first question that I have, I don't pretend to be a lawyer or have any legal training, is whether insults and implication are grounds for defamation. It seems to me that defamation would need to be something that you can prove to be actually false. And I also don't know whether defamation is something that can be done by several people together. If one person says something and someone else hasn't said it, are they also then liable for it? So those things lead me to believe that I don't know that this is ever expected to go to trial. Again, I wonder if this is just intimidation. When I look at this, if you were to say insults were defamation, then if I were to say, oh, Fauci is a monster, would that be grounds for him to sue? If Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would write a book that talked about all the different things that may say that Fauci was implicated in a lot of very bad stuff, is that grounds for a lawsuit? Or do you need to be able to show that someone has lied, that they have presented false information. Now, Robert Malone in this filing says, well, they should have known better because I say right on my website, here's what my intentions are. And that is supposed to be good enough for them. That one of the things that they say, that Peter Breggin says, is Malone is dangerous. He is in the middle of all of these horrible things that are happening. And so for Malone to say, well, I'm not dangerous, and I said that I wasn't dangerous, and so he should know that, doesn't seem to me to be something that belongs in a court of law. The filing reads, quote, "The gist of the defamatory statements and implications is that Dr. Malone lacks the character and is unfit to be a medical doctor and scientist. Defendant's statements described below exposed Dr. Malone to public ridicule, scorn, and contempt, and severely prejudiced him in his profession and employment. In this case, Dr. Malone seeks presumed damages, actual damages for injury to reputation, past and future, insult, pain and mental anguish, past and future, special damages including lost income, career damage and impairment of future earnings capacity, and punitive damages as a result of defendant's statements and actions." As some commenters have noticed, however, Malone has not practiced as a doctor, that his fitness to be practicing as a doctor isn't in question. And what he said is that he's walked away from all of his contracts and all of his associations as a research scientist and as the inventor of the mRNA vaccine and all of his Department of Defense contracts and all the health committees that he's been on. So he has already said, I'm not part of that world. I have broken my ties and walked away. That's kind of the point of contention here. So what's the 25 million? As far as he said, all he's making money on now is his Substack subscriptions and his racing horses that he raises on his farm. And I don't think either of those are going to amount to 25 million. Plus, if you're a journalist, controversy is good. You want people to hear about you from someone else. Any criticism is good publicity. So that doesn't make sense to me that he would be attaching a number like that and saying that it's because it has hindered his professional capacity, which is doing all the things in which this movement is now against. To make the case that he is a credible and upstanding person, he gives his credentials as his invention of the mRNA vaccination, his DNA and RNA mRNA patents, his 100 publications and 12,000 citations, his chairing of multiple HHS and Department of Defense committees, his membership in the National Institute of Health's ACTIVE, which is tasked with managing clinical research for a variety of drugs and antibody treatments for COVID-19. The second paragraph on his credentials states that his mission is expressly disclosed on his website to ensure vaccine safety, make sure that children are protected, stop and or limit harmful vaccine mandates, and identify and teach about life-saving treatments for COVID-19 and other pandemics. His goal is to save lives. So his credentials, as we're supposed to take them, are what he says that they are on his mission statement, rather than looking at his actual history and his actions. In effect, though, everything that he believes is going to make him credible to the court is exactly what the Bregans are pointing to as evidence that he's not credible as a whistleblower against the vaccine in specific, but also against the general mechanism of the government health system. The credentials are the same facts that he cites as defamation when Dr. Jane Ruby says them. Membership in NIH's active, HHS, and DoD connections, and chairing committees that have procured billions in research grants. Before this controversy, which Malone has posted about in many different posts that I've read, I had never heard of the Bregans, although I do have friends who say that they have saved their lives. And I researched them by going to their website because of this. And that's where I found out that they have 110 years of combined credentials to work in reforms of medical and psychiatric abuses, especially with the pharmaceutical companies. They have done, and Peter has done, an international campaign against lobotomies and closed down psychosurgeries, ended government funding for research facilities. His research forced electroshock companies to inform the FDA that it caused brain damage. Together, the Bregans ended a Congress-funded interagency program on inner-city children to fund biological and genetic causes for their alleged propensity for violence. So they've been committed for a very long time. In the 1990s, Peter was the sole medical expert for reviewing discovery in 150 combined cases alleging suicide, murder, and psychosis from Prozac. As the date for the trial came near, everyone in his family started feeling sick, started getting sicker and sicker, and the doctors couldn't figure it out. And then a plumber who happened to be going down into the cellar found that their oil heaters and their gas heaters had been left without their chimneys, their chimneys had been taken off. And so that is, he says, the most serious threat to them, although by far not the only, that has happened before this 25 million lawsuit, which stands to financially ruin them. Even though they have been at times penniless and threatened, what they write is, "We have been blessed with a feeling of being protected when we have decided to make a stand about something we deem to be of great importance in respect to human well-being and freedom. By our deeds we have earned our enemies, and the good that has come from our work has confirmed our choice on how to live." None of this is in the description that's given by Malone. What he says in the filing is, Breggin and Ginger Breggin are citizens of New York. They are husband and wife. The Bregans own and operate a website, Bregin.com, on which they publish and advertise materials supportive of their view that America is being taken down by a pack of bloodthirsty predators, frenzied over feasting upon the carcass of our great nation. The Bregans produce and publish radio and internet shows which they use to broadcast false and defamatory statements to Virginia and elsewhere. So this is the kind of description that they give of them, but that's better than the one they do on Dr. Jane Ruby, who claims that she is a medical professional and a pharmaceutical drug development expert with over 20 years of experience in regulatory processes for drug approval with the FDA and the EMA. The filing continues. Ruby uses her internet show and social media accounts to broadcast false and defamatory statements into Virginia to subscribers and users who pay Ruby for her unlawful content. For instance, she republished false and defamatory statements about Dr. Malone in an episode titled Overcoming Psychopaths and Global Tyranny. Ruby and the Bregans know no bounds or decency. They attack and defame anyone and everyone who disagrees with their theories about a new world order and global predators. In this case, the Bregans and Ruby initiated a smear campaign against Dr. Malone because Dr. Malone supported the views of a Belgian psychologist named Matthias Desmet. Is it defamation to say that the Bregans know no bounds or decency? Could that interfere with their practice as physicians, which I believe they still are? Or could it interfere with Peter being a material witness in court cases against pharmaceutical companies? It seems to me that what Malone is doing here is the same thing that he's saying is done to him. He's also saying that they attack anyone and everyone who disagrees with them about the New World Order or global predators. That seems like a fact that could be proven or disproven if there are people who disagree with them on ideas that they don't turn around and then attack their reputation. That would be something that says, no, it is possible to disagree about ideas, that there's something else that's going on here. Of the 14 material statements that Malone has brought to this, 10 of them are about ideological differences regarding Desmet's theory of mass formation psychosis. The other ones I have all of these online so that you can look at them on my Substack, but here are the ones that are not related to the ideology or the opinions. Malone is dangerous. I knew from day one this man is in the middle of every horrific thing that has happened to humanity. He is an operative running interference to keep this thing going. And that's Peter Breggin. And then Robert Malone, campaigning around the world as a member of the health freedom movement, may be profoundly immersed in the deep state of HHS, CDC, FDA, and Department of Defense. In the last 5 years, a period for which we have information ending in 2017, Malone obtained and managed $9.5 billion in government contracts. Now he is a member of the new NIH agency Active, which promotes the Great Reset by bringing together multiple powerful U.S. agencies, from the NIH, FDA, CDC, and DoD, with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and ultimately with a dozen of the top pharmaceutical companies. That is Dr. Jane Ruby, which is also her, saying, Breggin makes some key points. Malone was never part of any freedom or liberty movement prior to the COVID scam. In fact, he's the opposite. He's admitted to voting for Obama and Hillary, and his connections and associations are 100% CIA, DoD, intelligence community. That's not the origins of the health freedom movement, and now he's positioning himself as the leader of the health freedom movement and posing as some sort of conservative freedom movement guru, and that he is part of the deep state oppressors. Dr. Malone's concept of mass formation psychosis is calculated to protect the mass murderers of COVID-19. When I look at Dr. Malone's own words in an early interview he did with Dr. Mercola, which was reprinted on the Children's Health Defense that's run, of course, by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., what he says is, I have historically worked with people who have been truly deep state intelligence community. I have decades of experience in biodefense. I have been deep in the belly of the beast. I have won literally billions of dollars for my clients in grants and contracts. I have managed hundreds of millions of dollars in grants and contracts in the vaccine space. As study section chair or key study section member on many $100+ million contract reviews for typically the NIH, but also the Department of Defense, I have historically been deeply embedded in this whole enterprise. I know it upside down. I understand this system. So I think the concerns that I could be controlled opposition are valid. I think that it's appropriate to acknowledge the basis for those concerns. Now, those concerns, I think, are refuted by my behaviors and actions. In some of my other episodes, I've looked at biodefense as being a contradiction in terms because it should always be called bioterrorism. These are not weapons that can ever be used for defense. They can only be used against another population that is in a different place or that is ethnically different, which is what a lot of these have been designed to do. So to me, that's a deep, deep confusion in terms of ethics that isn't just the superficial, should we be making these mandatory? This is someone who has been part of this thinking and has felt so good about it that he's still bragging about it even now. In that same interview, after he explains a business partner who was ex-CIA who contacted him from Wuhan in 2019, he says, "So even if I was controlled opposition, that's kind of irrelevant. The question is not who I am. The question is, what is the information? Is it useful to you? Is it helping you to manage your own affairs, make conformed choices about vaccinating your children? If so, I think that even if I was controlled opposition, I suspect that I'm fairly useful controlled opposition for those of us that are in this boat together of seeking truth. Frankly, all of my contacts with the government now are destroyed. The colleagues that I used to communicate with regularly at the FDA will no longer take my call. I've dropped my contract with Defense Threat Reduction Agency." So, as my friend has pointed out, the discovery for this trial will be very interesting because in order to show that Robert Malone has had no contact that is current with the DOD or any of the CIA or deep state and no funding, I think that the Bregans will probably be asking for years worth of financial records and of phone records and of texts and of emails. And I think that that's something that is important because I don't agree with him that the question of whether he's controlled opposition is irrelevant. I think that if he's useful, we need to be asking, useful to whom? On my Substack, I'll be putting links to other people who are commenting on the same thing, like Sage Hannah and someone called Airlift Underground, who has a particularly sassy take on it. I think Charles Eisenstein is alluding to it and is going to do a follow-up that I suspect will be very interesting. So this is not just looking at who are the players, but it's also looking at why are we being played and what is the agenda that's going on. So I'd like to link here my one on the Great Reset's 3 agendas and also my playlist on propaganda and censorship. Thank you for watching, and please check this out also on Substack.